Here we go. So, welcome everyone. I'm Michael Naylor, and I'm the director of the Maine Enneagram Center for Transformation and Change, and hopefully some good luck too. And I'm here today with Ned Abendroth, who I had the great luxury of meeting about, must have been 3, 4 weekends ago at an Illuman retreat, which was the elders' rites of passage for men who are 60 and older. And Ned was one of our great leaders and got to spend time and watch him work for 4 days and just was really moved. And then I asked him if he would do an Enneagram interview with me, and he said he was a type three, and of course, he was shining and radiant like a charismatic type three, and just in the flow. And it was so. Anyway, that brings us here today, and just want to thank you, Ned, for being here, and appreciate your presence and just really the way you articulated so many wonderful spiritual principles that were really in line with what I felt customary with. So that said, before I go into that, I wondered if you might want to just introduce yourself and what it is you do, and then we'll go to the next question, which is how did you discover you were type three?
Sure. So, well, first of all, thanks. It's great to be here, and thank you so much for doing this series. I think I know when I was first getting involved in Illumin, there was a lot of conversation around the Enneagram, and it was very helpful for me as a way of understanding who I am and how I show up in the world. And so I can only imagine that having kind of some interviews with different Illumin men is something that could be really helpful for the broader community. I am a father. Of four teenagers,
Wow.
13 to 19, and three boys and a girl. I'm a husband. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a pastor.
Oh,
Um, I'm somebody who has a heart for tapping into my forewing. I love being creative,
hmm.
doing all kinds of creative aspects of life. And yeah, there's a lot of different things. I mean, most of my time I spend these days either parenting or tending to the work that I love doing within the Illumin community. There's a
Hmm.
few business things I have tending to as well here and there, but
Yeah.
most of my Illumin has most of my attention these days.
Well, awesome. I can see there'll be an avenue for giving some parent tips on how to be a type three with four teenagers and survive and still breathe. Uh, that alone is a task in and of itself. So maybe say a little bit about how you discovered that you were a type three and what was it like to have that revealed?
Well, I don't actually remember the moment when I discovered, but I do. I mean, I kind of remember that general era, and it felt like a relief to me to under like, okay, this makes so much sense, um, and yeah. So to that might be the biggest thing is a sense of relief and a way of understanding who I was,
Mhm.
and it would have been probably around 2000, maybe like 14 or 15, and probably from Damien or Jim Taylor or some of the other guys who were leaders in Illumin at the time that were pretty aware of the Enneagram, Brad Pickle as well. Those guys
Okay.
all,
Mhm.
those guys all kind of would have been in conversations with me at one point or another around my threeness.
Awesome. Well, so say a little bit about what you identify in the three definition, like what
Sure.
makes you a three?
Well, it is interesting how much of this stems from my own story around religion. So I grew up in an incredibly conservative kind of, I would not say, I'd say it's a cult, really,
Mhm.
not even a mainstream Christian tradition, loosely based on Christianity, but outside of it as well.
Mhm.
And all you really need to know about it is that I was terrified of God and terrified of going to hell, and pretty sure I was not, in fact, convinced I wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
And all love had to be earned. There was no, and so I was in this like meritocracy that I was pretty sure I was going to lose and was losing.
Yeah.
And So this just feeds right into the type three, as you can imagine. So I became the straight A student, the athlete, the leader, all of those things, in a sense of trying to like make sure I was good enough for God. And that would be if I had language for what my core wound was, it was that I'm not good enough for God. And with that, one thing that's not always common for threes, but for me was true, was there was this that religious experience. We got out of that when I was about 16. So it was kind of in these formative years, and then
Yeah.
stepped into ever bigger boxes for God
Hmm.
in the years that have followed. But there was, no being pretty sure that you're a piece of shit in God's eyes,
Hmm.
means like this ongoing degrading of your own dignity. And so so ironically, for me, like having to be able to be comfortable with my goodness and my glory, that's been hard for me. That's been my work,
Yeah.
is be able to accept that, um yeah, accept my own beauty, be able to tolerate it a bit. So
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. And I like the idea of stepping into a bigger box for God.
sure.
Uh,
I say, I'm still Christian,
mhm.
but I'm pretty sure God is, at least I'm not sure, I'm pretty sure God is not, at least not exclusively Christian, The
Yeah.
mystery does not want to be contained by any boxes. And
Yeah.
so I still speak about God with the most fluency within the Christian language, but
Yeah.
it's one language, one
Yeah.
language.
Well, that's what I so appreciate about Richard Rohr and sort of the foundation he's created around that idea that there are more than one stream of higher wisdom coming in. It's not just through the Christian church, but there's, if you
Yeah.
study the other parallel, spiritual paths, you'd be surprised how identical they are in many ways, at least at
Mhm.
the heart level. So with that said, as a little kid, a little type three, and a teenager, sounds like that kind of competitive edge to show up and be that ideal that would please God, and was, I would imagine, perhaps your family, mother and
Sure.
father were on.
Yep.
So when you played sports, like what was it like to be up against you as an athlete?
Oh man. Well, that was one place where, so I would outwork. I was not the most gifted athlete, but I would work the hardest.
Yeah.
And so it would always feel like I'm going to get the most out of my talent. Um, and, uh, but I had an inherent suspicion because of my background around, um, kind of the self-promotional and the kind of the way that you could imagine locker rooms can be.
Yeah.
Like that, none of that really gelled with me. I was very uncomfortable in those settings. I mean, I was a
Mhm.
very kind of a classic good boy, like, follow the rules and all that.
Yeah.
Uh, and so it was in some ways kind of, um, I enjoyed but the game between the lines. But outside, in the social interactions around sports, at least in my high school years, it's been very different as an adult. I still love sports now, but
Mhm.
um, uh, yeah, there was a sense of being uncomfortable with the culture around sports.
Well, it sounds like the kind of the vanity extroverted part of being a three wasn't necessarily something you were so attuned to, at least on an external level. But it sounds like you do what threes do, which is work as hard as they can with whatever they have until they drop, and that always produces some kind of positive event or outcome. Would you say that with your kind of three energy that you tended to have a charismatic sort of vibe about you that inspired other kids, or was that more withdrawn?
The older I got, definitely, so especially as we were able to leave the religious tradition of my first 16 years, then continued to be in leadership in the communities I was in, whether to some level in high school, but then also in college,
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
the president of my fraternity in college, those kinds of things where people, which is ironic for given who I am, like, well, even thinking of my life in a fraternity, but it was actually a pretty healthy container for me at the time. And yeah, I think that people did look to me in a particular way, but there's always a cost to that, right? And so um, the cost as a three is always, for me, was an inherent suspicion that people didn't really love or appreciate me. They loved and appreciated what I did for them and the what I was producing. And
Yes.
so there's this fear of if they really knew me, how would they feel? And same with God, okay,
Yeah.
I'm doing the right things, but if God really knew me, he would know or she would know or
Hmm.
the mystery would, and of course yeah. So anyway, that train of thought, is always is always there.
Yeah.
And a sense of shame. Shame for was much more than even fear. Shame was the thing for me because there was a sense that I was inadequate and not sufficient
Yeah.
as I was.
Yeah. So, uh, how did that affect your ability to form relationships back in the 20s and 30s? I mean, there's been an evolution. I imagine there's been an evolutionary arc, but
Yeah.
um, if you're a shining star, I mean, I know the kind of dilemma is I'm a four with a sometimes three wing, often a five wing, but that sense of I'm not qualified to be in God's presence was a really strong message. And so I performed really hard and I was a star in my own right playing basketball, baseball, football. But there was a sense if somebody complimented me that they were talking to the wrong guy. Like,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
who, me? I'm just a fraud here. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
And that continued even into my 30s that that was definitely in my shadow. And there was a moment when I was at a retreat that I had helped really create over, and it took, several years in the planning. And we're near the end of this very long retreat, and I'm giving this announcement, and all of the people there at the retreat start chanting my name.
Hmm.
And I was like the deer in headlights. And I was like this visceral thing of run. I was literally going to run out of the tent. I was so terrified.
Hmm.
And they're chanting my name and I could not handle it. And then one of my dear friends, he grabbed me and was pulling on me. He's like, you were having an enormous response. They are just trying to say thank you. And
Hmm.
this isn't really about you at all. They're trying to express gratitude.
Hmm.
And maybe some of it's about you. Could you handle it if it was about you a little bit? And that was yeah, that's so to your question about relationships in my 20s. Now, I mean, I got married young and we have a wonderful relationship, although I grew up in a family where the conflict was like anathema, right? I never saw my parents ever argue. I thought it was always just marriage is just you always agreed with each other. And so the
Hmm.
very first time we ever got into like the tiniest dispute with my wife, I very quickly just apologized. I'm so sorry, and this won't, whatever, and it was over for me because of course, you can't have argument. That'd be like the failure of marriage. And my wife, God bless her, she was very not satisfied with that response. She's like, I want to like we need to tangle over this. This is worth tangling and it's okay to tangle. But I did have I mean a wonderful relationship with my wife and I had good friends, but I'd say in my 20s my best friends were always much older,
Mhm.
and even into my early 30s I
Mm.
had mentors who I was very close to. It
Mm.
wasn't until my mid 30s that I had a group of men who I consider really my peers and who um, who knew me and who I knew them in the deepest of ways that I want to be known.
Yeah.
And that's been a real gift now to feel like I'm in a place, I'm just another person with peers and not amongst peers, and not having my closest relationships be only older men.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so that particular dilemma of you know, allowing oneself to feel, the glory or the beauty of oneself. What kinds of things have helped you to unpack that or create more
Yeah.
space for that?
Well, look, two things. First of all, for sure, the best antidote to my threeness, without question, has been a gift that I received after going through the men's rites of passage. And it was Richard just teaching that, Ned, you don't have to do anything. And
Mm,
um, you don't have to, so you're beloved. And now I could have, by the way, my whole life, well, maybe especially in my 20s and late teens, I could have said, "Oh yeah, God loves me," right? But I did not. I didn't know it in my bones.
yeah.
It was an intellectual belief that I affirmed, but I really didn't know.
Mhm,
And oh, God loves me. But this sense of belovedness that I started to tap into was this sense that I don't have to do anything to earn this belovedness. I never could earn it. It's
mm,
not even, that's even the wrong question.
mm,
I can't do anything to screw it up, to mar it. No matter what I do, it's not going to change. It's not going to increase or enhance the amount God loves me. It won't.
mhm,
It won't decrease it. And so there was this sense. I remember Richard saying, you don't have to do anything. And of course, for do that word for three, that's what we're about, right? You don't
right.
have to do a damn thing. My whole life, all I've been doing is doing to try to earn a seat at the table. You don't
Mm,
have to. You're beloved, period.
mm,
Now, can you just hang out there for a while? And then the next thing is, now, if you want to do something, if you have desire, well,
mm,
that's a whole nother story. Go
mm,
ahead. That's wonderful. Or
mm,
don't.
mm,
And I
mm,
think of Eckhart Tolle, when he had his great awakening, he sat on a bench for 3 years, basically. Every day went to the park and just sat on a bench and just sat in a place of like reveling in the beauty of it all.
mm.
And is that anyhow less than all of the productivity? No, there's something like that. This too. So that was the antidote for me of being like, I don't have to do anything. Like I'm beloved, period.
Yeah.
And that's always been the antidote to my addiction to productivity, I think, because I have a hard time still
Mm,
like relaxing, where if it's like, okay, um, if it's a day off, I can have anxiety about like not, okay, I really should be doing something. It's such bullshit. And I was like, and so this is so ridiculous, but like, I'm like, okay, if I will mop the floors or I'll clean the toilets or something like that, then I'll have earned the right to relax. As if like, oh man. And then of course you're just playing with the wound a little bit, like sufficing it, not it's an ongoing work to be like, and I actually don't have to work. I don't have to do anything. I could just be today, and that
Yeah.
would be okay. And often I
Yeah.
think I look over at Jamie, would she be all right if I'm just sitting here on the couch, not like doing anything? And she's been way more permissive. Ned, take a load off. Like, why are you killing yourself? And so that's definitely like a continued
Yeah. Practice.
learning for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the threes that I'm close to have mentioned the same thing. It's like if there's a gap between this goal and the next, it's like, what do I do with the space in between? Like, relax. That's like, it's almost like if I relax, I'm going to be getting behind. I won't be keeping up. Something bad will happen. And so they will say, yeah, I get anxious until I find another target. And when I've got
Yeah.
another target, I take a breath and I can go for it again. So
Yeah.
it's just something that's so deeply hardwired, it seems.
Yeah. So there's two things there. One is I remember Richard one time, and when I say Richard, I'm talking about Richard Rohr, of course, talking about meditation. He goes, it's now I'm probably putting words into his mouth. This is probably me saying it,
Mhm.
but it was kind of like him saying, it's like giving the middle finger to the man. It's like saying, you know what? For the next 20 minutes, I'm going to refuse to participate in the addiction to productivity. I'm just going to sit here for 20 minutes. That in itself is, and I was like, oh, that changes it for that. This is medicine I need, right? And then when I still do have, I've learned to like go to creativity, like making beauty. So even like right now, like a little, like I have art projects that are going right now. They're not accomplishing anything in the world other than beauty that is for me. And maybe
Yeah.
other people see it or not. It's probably not worth seeing, but
Mhm.
it's like okay, so the desire to create is a beautiful desire, and um, I can kind of play there in a way that is like this is wonderful. I can just be creative in an artistic way and
Yeah.
get into my four a bit, as you would know all about.
Yeah. Well, it's that being able to just be rather than do. It's kind of like crossing the Kilimanjaro. It's not such a small thing that I mean, I remember when I first learned about the Enneagram and I had the map in front of me, I thought, "Oh, this is only going to take a couple weeks to sort through this, right?" But core patterns, like, go very deep. They're deeply woven into my psyche, and they're like, learning to hypnotize a snake or something. They're not so easy to transcend except slowly but surely. And so I hear and appreciate it here, that pattern has a way of tapping you on the shoulder, saying, I'm still here. What do you want to do with this? And depending on your level of presence, you're able to make a healthy choice or one that might be in connection, similar to the past. But so it's not the easy. It takes my experience is it takes a lot of humility to even walk in these waters because my ego patterns are faster than me. They're like a bullet out and I'm like, Wait a second," and so I get to watch myself. There's a guy who wrote a book called Self-Observation, Red Hawk. I don't know if you've heard of it, but he said the thing about patterns is you usually have to watch them at least 10,000 times before they start to quiet and you get a
Yeah.
little gap and you have some choice. So just be of strong heart and realize that it's not quick and fast. And I imagine for the three, I've got a lot of three in me too, but that three is like, I see it, I should be able to handle it. Let's go. Right. And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. So,
And for a three, one of the other key antidotes is for us to be authentic. And as soon as we start, putting on a show,
mm,
we're in trouble, and everybody else is in trouble too around us. Although they might not know it because they can buy into they can't see through it. We're really good at hiding that. And,
yes.
um, and so there's a commitment for me to having to be transparent and authentic as knowing that that's like medicine and also it's also a superpower of the three. Like there's nothing more um for when a three is being very open and authentic, that is when they're at their in the like
Yeah.
they're most powerful in a good way, right?
Yes,
So
absolutely.
for me that's meant yeah, calling bullshit on myself and also being committed to being in a community. I've always thought, like with Illumin, that if Illumin was ever a place where I couldn't be real, then it'd be time for me to get out of that position or get out of the community. Because
Yeah.
if I'm having to be performative in the community, then okay, this is no longer working for, it's no longer healthy for me, you know? And
Yeah.
same with my relationships. It's like I have to be able to be I have to just an ongoing commitment to being open and real.
Well, you point to something. that's an interesting challenge for some threes is this my capacity to fool people so they don't really see through that I'm caught in the performative trap right now. I remember this one minister came up to me and said, sometimes my performance is so good, I can't see it. I believe my own bullshit. It's just so, and people just applaud me. Says I can perform being and look like I'm really embodying this idea of being in presence and being, and I can be performing it and not be touching it at all, but no one knows it, and hardly myself. And he said I have to set up trained eyes to keep an eye on me from time to time to give me a little poke when I start to slip away from authenticity into performing authenticity. So
Yeah.
it's tricky, at
Yeah.
least as it's been explained to me. But it sounds like you have a sense of discerning that, or maybe it's a gut feeling or a heart feeling that allows you to sense when you're really in the real deal.
Yeah. And maybe because at an early age, some of my, I'm so grateful to my mother. There was a couple key times when I was somebody who would confess, I gotta get it off my shoulders, right? And despite the judgmental, very smallness of her box,
Mm,
she somehow intuited a larger grace that she
mm,
was able to offer that wouldn't have fit theologically with her articulated beliefs, but she lived bigger than her beliefs.
mm,
And so to be able to receive, I mean, she played the role of God or Christ or mother,
mm,
a great mother to
mm,
me,
mm.
and a few times of me confessing something I felt like I'd done that was really wrong,
Yeah.
and then to be met with such grace. That I think that like paved the way for authenticity to be uh,
Mm.
an ongoing thing. I can't imagine if those early moments had been met with judgment,
Yeah.
damnation,
Yeah.
then then I can imagine a whole lifetime of living out of that wound,
Yeah.
in terms of like it's not safe to show yourself. I've always felt because of my mother that yeah, I think that's been a story that I've held on to and
Yeah.
and told it to myself, that
Yeah.
it's the
Well,
grace is on the other side of this.
very powerful discernment for sure, and a grace. I think you're right. It could have just taken you off on the whole shame and work harder and feel bad
Yeah.
about myself. And
I already
so,
got enough of that.
yeah, yeah. So when you were just a little guy, it sounds like there was a strong ideal that you were playing to. And being a type three, it's almost like I'm going to be almost like the best good little boy that lives. I am the one, and that's how I might get a break from God, but probably not. I'll just have to get up in the morning and resign myself to I got to be great again today in the eyes of God. But it's almost like yesterday's effort doesn't matter today. We're just starting over again. And sometimes threes have said when they're caught up in their personality patterns that yesterday's victories don't matter. It's like they got to start over, all over again to prove themselves and everybody else. Is that anything that you relate to?
Yeah, I could see that. Um, yeah, there's I think I can resonate with that. And I think part of that is also the stage of life I'm in.
Mhm.
There's um I'm an adult. I'm not an elder. I don't see myself as that. I see my and I one of the ways I think about the difference between adults and elders is an adult maybe has like an asymmetric priority, like an extra emphasis on transformational action over transformational presence. It's not an either or, right?
Mhm.
I think of the elder as one who can shape a room simply with their presence,
Mm.
and that there's an emphasis on presence or being, overdoing. Now, we need elders. Right now, you're doing as well as being. It's never one or the other. It's always both.
Mhm.
But for me, there is a sense of like now is the I'm in my like mid late 40s. Now's the time in a healthy way for me to be active, to burn the candle and to so I don't feel I don't know. I'd have to think about this one, Michael.
Yeah.
Com do I feel like that's driving me in an unhealthy way, or is it in a way of like this is a stage of life
Hmm. Hmm.
and it's something I'll be able to release
Yeah.
in 10 years maybe or something like that. I don't know.
Well, you've just started midlife, so you've got plenty of time.
I got plenty of time.
But that's a great question also to be asking yourself. It's really, as opposed to just sort of going along with a supposed type three story. It's like, well, what's really true? Is this a part of the stage of life I'm in right now? And I think that's a really important question to be asking. Uh, so when you think about the Jedi gifts of the type three, what comes to mind for you?
Well, certainly like the ability to accomplish a great deal of tasks is that's got to be on the list. Now I feel like I'm always dropping balls at this point. Like there's so many balls that I'm juggling that I just see one I'm like, "Oh, that one I just can't even Oh, there it fell." So, and like I was like this is the way of things, I can't do
Mhm.
anything about that. That for sure. I'm told by especially friends who I've been involved with in the Northwest and Illumin, that I have a way of inviting people
Mhm.
and getting them to participate and serve where they're like, I don't even know how I got here. Somehow Ned talked to me and now now I'm working doing this or now I'm doing that.
Yeah.
Like there's a way of I don't know what it is, but people say it's like, yeah, you have a way of inviting people that we'll say yes to, and we'll end up
Yeah.
participating like we wouldn't have said yes if we'd been thinking about it or something.
Well, it's a magnetism. It's like a
Maybe
magnetism.
it is. It is a magnetism.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can
And
feel
part
that.
of that might be shaped. I remember one other thing is um there was probably a good antidote to my threeness. It was when my mom died, and
Mm.
my mom died. So I was 20, let's see, 22, right? I was relatively young. She died of cancer.
Mm.
It was a powerful season of life for
Mm.
all of us. And I was at very formative time. I was studying economics and business and entrepreneurial studies at University of Washington, and went to her funeral. And wouldn't you know it, like 500 people were there. And my mom had no resume. She did not do volunteer work. She wasn't on any boards.
Um,
She didn't have a job. She was a mother in a
Yeah.
small town, right?
Mm.
And but the stories that we got after, and by the way, there was a certain judgment I had about my mom's like impact in the world because my dad was, Rotarian and he was a leader and he was doing all these successful business owner, all this stuff. I somehow probably elevated my dad above my mother because
Mm.
of the outward manifestations of his activity in the world and
Mm.
not being able to recognize what she was contributing to the world. But at her funeral, we got like letter after letter after letter from people who said things like, I'll never forget being in the grocery store and your mom sitting there while her ice cream melted in her cart and just listened to me talk for 30
Wow.
minutes.
Wow.
Or, she must have, my mom was a good two, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or I'll never forget have your mom showing up to, there's all these things, the way my mom just was able to bless. And what I
Mm.
realized in that moment is that the most important thing in life for me would be relationships and people and not It just this whole career
Mm,
and business
yeah.
and accomplishment and all that stuff just didn't. The only thing that matters is the end of life. Did I
Mm,
have like a positive impact on people and the relationships that are in my life? So
yeah.
that's helpful as a three
Yeah.
because it shifts my focus. There was a lot of times when I've been like, well, I could be doing this task, but people is more important.
Yeah.
And uh,
Powerful.
and that's probably also tied to the darkness of the Jedi skill. Because Jedi skills can go both ways.
Yes, they can.
Is that because I'm like people oriented,
Mhm.
um, then I probably could be manipulative if I was not healthy, right? In being able to get people to
That's right.
participate in something that they didn't really want to participate in. So,
That's right. Well,
but
we say about threes that they could, if they decide to sell you something, they will sell you something,
oh
and it
man,
can be used for good or good or less healthy.
yeah,
But I think there's something about just in getting to be with you over the 4 or 5 days with Iraq was just a sense when you would invite something, there was like a quality behind it that said, this is going to be the most fun thing you could ever possibly do. I mean, there's such a positive glow around it that's like all you could say was, well, yes, yes. Who'd want to pass up on this experience? I don't know what I'm signing up for, but it sounds pretty darn good. I'm in. So I'm just, there's something in your magnetism that has that kind of positive. It's like a blessing, really, to people to invite them in without coercing or
yeah,
guilting them. And
yeah,
and I think
yeah,
that's the other thing I noticed is just your balance around not guilting or coercing or inner critiquing people into doing things, just space to
right,
be, which is
yeah,
again really points to that type three authenticity, which is for type three, when they're landing in authenticity, as you know, it's kind of like the crown jewel of your experience. I mean, what could be more fulfilling than being in this open, spacious heart that's authentic and speaking the truth? And so I wonder if you were going to, um, speak to type threes, younger type threes who are maybe caught up in, I got to have the external thing. I've got to, authenticity that doesn't maybe call me right off. If you had any insider tips or not, for the threes or threes in Illumin who are trying to develop more presence.
uh-huh, uh-huh.
It's too big of a question, but I thought I would throw it out.
Yeah, well, it's beautiful. The fool is the one who has to learn things the hard way, and the wise is the one who can learn through other people's experiences, not just their own. And I do think there's so much out there that says these things that us threes are shooting for, they will never satisfy us.
Mhm.
And they are not the answer we're looking for. And we could achieve all of them and still feel like we'll just discover, like many people have discovered already, oh, that wasn't it. That wasn't it.
Yeah.
And so you have to, the only way is to stop, is to get off of that gerbil wheel, or hamster wheel,
Yeah.
and start to kind of consider another way of looking at it. And part of that is this language around, we kind of, there's in the US, we have this notion of abundance versus like not enough, insufficiency or abundance. And I can't remember her name, but there's a teacher who I learned this from, that um, it's really not about moving towards abundance. It's recognizing sufficiency that already
Mhm.
is. And if you're not able, and what the only thing that can ever be sufficient is what is right now.
Mhm.
Because if what is right now is not, if you're looking for something that's more, that will always be in the future. And if you do get it, it's still not enough. So it has to do with a change of perspective of saying where I am right now, what
Mhm.
is right now, um,
Mhm.
is enough. And I'm in a sense, I am sufficient now as well.
Yeah.
And I'm beloved.
Yeah.
And once you're able to start to recognize that, then for me, which for me was taking, I mean, for a while after that, I took that name of beloved. Like I knew it was everybody's name, it wasn't special to me, but
Yeah.
I needed it in particular for a while, like to say, okay, if I was to have another name, it'd be beloved.
Mm.
Not beloved by other people, because I was always suspicious of that. Like, well, they love me for what I do, but no, I'm beloved just for before I ever did anything before I was born, that beloved, that. And
Mm.
once I was able to tap into that, then I think
Mm.
not always, of course not, but uh, I would want to think that a lot of my creative drive
Mhm. Okay.
has been able to come from a place
Mm.
more of longing and desire and less of trying to earn something. If I was thinking the last 10 years, it's
Well,
been less compulsion and more, maybe more desire. I'm sure it's still a mixed bag, it'll always
well,
be.
it's probably takes several lifetimes, I'm guessing, but I'm thinking from the standpoint of what we teach through the Enneagram paradigm is that the wound to the type three is this loss of connection with their innate preciousness. And which means disconnection from the divine and their inherited preciousness just as for being a being on the planet. And that's a big one to unpack and to start to feel. And I just wondered if there were particular things that helped you to start to be able to drop into that and to feel that belovedness. Or maybe it's just a work in progress, but I'm just curious if anything comes to mind.
Well, um, I'm trying to decide how much to share here.
Hmm.
I'm sure there's other ways to do this, but I think for me, the story that keeps just like jumping up at me is, pretty soon after my MROP, and it was also in that time that um, that I had first started to really drop into belovedness as something that was a divine birthright and not something that I earned.
Yeah.
I got I got cancer, pretty serious cancer, not to bore with the story. It was things look grim, and um, there was a sense for me, a practice and partly because of my experience on the MROP, which is like I don't want to be against what is unfolding in my life, and I don't want to demand that life goes, quote, my way.
Hmm. Hmm.
Could I be at peace with whatever happens?
Hmm.
And rather than kind of choosing to be optimistic, like, oh, it's all going to work out, which didn't seem likely, but you could still choose to people still choose that route,
Hmm.
or go to a place of despair of like, oh, woe is me, I'm definitely dying. Could I
Hmm.
just hang in the balance of like not knowing and
Hmm.
be in this crucible and just to say, yeah, I don't know what will happen. And then in that crucible, so I hung out there for several years. Um,
Hmm.
and um, and in the midst of that, I had a pretty classic near-death experience, which I didn't know was classic at the time. Now
Hmm.
it's like, oh, I'm just one of millions of people who had this happen. It's not about me at all. It's like I'm not special here. It's like, but and in fact, it's interesting in Michael Polanyi's work, with plant medicine, which I've not experienced, but I've really enjoyed reading about is like he mentions that near-death experiences are often the same kind of thing that people have when they're on mushrooms. It's like, huh, isn't that interesting? So I had that I had one of these
Oh.
experiences while I
Beautiful.
was walking down the street, a mystical encounter of union, of oneness.
Beautiful.
And I won't go through the whole story, but the thing that came for me out of that, like the bottom line of it all, was Julian of Norwich, her classic saying of, all shall be well, and all shall be well, and all manner of things shall be well.
Mm,
And there was this sense of,
mm,
okay, if I die, all is well.
yeah.
If I live, all is well.
Mm,
If I struggle for many years with this, all there's no matter what, all shall be well. And
mm,
this universal,
beautiful.
like I knew it in a different way.
Mm,
Not only was I beloved,
mm,
but that cosmically, in the biggest sense,
mm,
not for me, for my individual life, for my family life, knowing that my kids all would be okay, even if I died. And then, but even right now, especially, we're in really crazy times in this world.
yes, we are.
And it sounds like a Pollyanna-ish thing to say,
Hmm.
rather trite, to say all shall be well. How could you say that's ridiculous? Look what's going on. But no, like I think there is that in a cosmic, big,
Mm,
big story way to know not only am I beloved, but all shall be well, all shall be
mm,
well.
yeah.
That I think more than anything else was, you know, cemented
Powerful.
the deal for me. So
Powerful. Really powerful. You can't really buy those experiences at the grocery store. That's the problem. You gotta be right out there on the edge where your ego's going. See, but anyway, thank you for sharing that. It was really beautiful because I really have that sense of it, what an interior experience it was. It wasn't just coming from your head center and creating a story, but that you had a full-bodied experience of that kind of communion, really, with the divine. And it sounds like it really shifted things for you in a big way. Uh,
yeah.
yeah. Well, let me sort of scoot over to the side a little bit and maybe ask some questions around, I wanted to really put Illumin on the map and men's work and all of that. And we just wondered if you could share what your journey has been around men's work and what you love about it. And, I know for myself, I did the MROP 2 years ago in Albuquerque. Richard Rohr did show up for that. It was really wonderful to have him there. And then, I did Awakening once. And the thing I've been deeply moved by is just a collection of men who really have as their intent to become more consciously present and to really develop that a stronger sense of compassion for self and others, and just everything that you were speaking to around being able to sense one's own belovedness. And it's quite that in the context of there's no rigid religious structure, but a sense of expansive, spacious appreciation of the mystery that if you put a name on God, then for right from the beginning you've made a mistake. It's like the unnameable in some ways. So, but anyway, I just wondered with that, that I've been deeply moved by that, and I just wanted to hear some of your take on it.
Oh man. Well, yeah, I owe so much of a debt of gratitude to Illumin and to the men who've created and held the space. My very first involvement was um I had known Richard going back to I was like around 2000 is when I first ran into him. But I didn't go to MROP, which was the first thing I ever went to in Illumin until 2012. And I had no idea what I was getting into. Um, and I really kind of thought, which I think is the best way to experience that, by the way, is not know if the more you can tolerate not knowing, like the better the surprise.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
but I kind of thought it was just going to be a lot of time of quiet and alone time and kind of out in the desert and time by myself. I didn't know anything more than that. And, there was a lot more than that. But it really gave me this notion that Richard, invited us to, um, the journey of descent. Like, how do we give up? How are we willingly going to surrender power?
Hmm.
And how will we befriend our wounds and befriend like life circumstances that we are that are the hard teachers, especially. I don't know how, because like as soon as I went through that, well, I already had a sense, this is something that I would want to be a part of long term, and could easily imagine taking it to the Northwest. There wasn't anything really going on in the Northwest at the time.
Mm.
And then very soon after that, I got cancer, within a matter of months. And
Wow.
I really think that the MROP set me up with the posture. I don't know what I would have done. It gave me the
Mm.
posture of how to embrace my dance with cancer for those years.
Yeah.
And then not only that, but it gave me a community of elders who who really saw me and what I was going through and embraced me and blessed me and
Mm.
encouraged me. And man, I remember, I mean, like there's a man named Lloyd from Texas who
Mm.
he's got to be 80 now. I've only been with him one time in my life, but it was in Aravipa Canyon in 2014. And in a council, I was right in the middle of this, and he said afterwards, he said, Ned, there's a difference between giving up and surrender.
Mm.
And he said, that's all he said. I was like, oh, what is the air between giving up and surrender?
Mm.
So it's just there's so many moments like that where a man will just drop a little bit of wisdom that I've been the recipient of,
Yeah.
and
Mm.
when I needed it. Um, so for me, it's been a community that has um, both called me and guided me, and I don't know. There's a lot. There's a lot there. I'm kind of forever grateful to this community of men, and my closest male friendships are within this context. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I could see that we could probably have another hour's worth of conversation quite easily. I'm aware that we've been at this about an hour, which has been really wonderful. I'm just wondering if you have any, I don't know, closing. I was just thinking, for men watching this, just being with you, there's definitely a powerful sense of possibility if you're drawn towards the positive that you've so beautifully radiated. Uh, sometimes I have a hard time saying or knowing like where does one start, right? And I started my inner work, years ago through, bumping into this and that and doing the next thing and the next spiritual practice, blah, blah, blah. Um, so I was just thinking in terms of Illumin, the one book I've really appreciated, well, there's a couple of them that Richard Ward has written. One is called On the Threshold of Transformation, which is the daily meditations, which I
Uh-huh.
think really captures the men's journey in light of spiritual journey. And I think it's beautifully done. And then, of course, Breathing Underwater is an awesome one in terms of working with the 12 steps. And as you say, being there and being in the experience is where the deeper transmission occurs. That's where you feel these words from the inside out. So um, that said, anything you might add to that would maybe encourage men who are curious?
Yeah, I mean, rather than try to understand it and then as a means by evaluating it with up here and then I
With
go,
the
maybe
head.
I'll go, you know what? Like it is one of those things. The only way to even begin, and I think understand is the wrong word, but
Hmm.
because it implies that we complete the understanding as opposed to beginning to know,
Hmm.
like something that is
Hmm.
endlessly knowable.
Hmm.
Um, my encouragement is almost always just to dive in and see and experience it for yourself. Like this is something that you can only really know. You can't really know from a book. You can read
Hmm.
about it afterwards and then start to put together like academic and theoretical underpinning this to what just happened and how am I to understand it.
Mm,
But as one of Richard's kind of things he loves to say is, we can never think our way into a new way of being. We can only, or a new way of living. We can only live our way into a new way of
mm,
thinking.
beautiful.
That certainly,
Yeah.
I think, was going all the way back to my mom and
Mhm.
her extension of grace, like living into something that she couldn't articulate theoretically, but she
Yeah.
knew
Yeah.
maybe through the spirit was like, oh, this is not a time for judgment. This is a time for grace.
Mm,
Um, that there's this is almost always life experience is what's going to lead us out of kind of the small boxes we put ourselves and put God into.
yeah.
And so,
Beautiful.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's so
I
dive
love it.
in.
Yeah, dive in. Well, and it's like, yes, okay, let's do it.
That's right. I just did it, didn't I? There it is again,
But
getting
it's
people to.
beautiful. I mean, it's coming from such a pure place, and that's what makes it so compelling, I think. And I agree. There's no way to understand it with your head. And even when you've done the experience, your head's still going to be going, what the hell was that? And something, gets
Yeah,
planted internally. So,
yeah, yeah,
well,
yeah.
look, why don't I want to thank you for taking this time and really giving us such a beautiful view of the type 3 soul and men's journey. And maybe down the road we can have a second interview or can even corral Richard Rohr into sitting through one of these. But I'm gonna I'm gonna turn the recording off. So let's see, where's my record button? Where did it go? It's okay. And let's see if I can do that.